Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Maggie with Whisked Away Cooking School. And today we're doing a couple spring recipes. I always get excited when the seasons change so we can switch up our ingredients. And I do like fruits and vegetables from all seasons, but I just love the colors of the spring ones. So we're doing a strawberry oatmeal cookie cobbler, and we're also doing a chopped spring salad. So true to my nature, we're going to start with dessert. It just takes a little bit longer, and we actually have to put it into the oven. So we're going to start with that first. So the first part we're going to start with is the filling. So I have taken some strawberries and I just cut the tops off and then cut them in half. Some of the bigger ones I will cut into quarters. I don't hull them, so I don't use a huller and take out the stem. I just chop the top right off. So they're going to look like, quartered or half strawberries, but you do want them all to be right around the same size. In my pan, I have a couple tablespoons of butter. You could use oil if you wanted to. You could use an avocado oil. You could even use a coconut oil because in this dish, it would work. The coconut would go with the other flavors. But we're using unsalted butter, and I always use unsalted butter when I'm cooking because I want to control the amount of seasoning in the food. It has nothing to do with the sodium content. Oh, I forgot to go over my 3 most important things about cooking. Number 1 is mise en place. So if you've watched or tuned into one of these classes before, then you know this is huge. You always want to be prepared. So having everything out and slice and dice before you start the process so that the cooking is just dump and stir. And always clean as you go, of course. And then I have a trash bowl by my workstation.
Leah, there's the audio issue. Sorry.
Again, like same thing. Let me close that door because the flies are coming in. Is that ring for you? Yeah, okay. Can you hear me with this one?
Yes. Yep.
All right, let's try it. All right, I have a fly. There's something on the screen too. I don't know what it is. Oh, okay. Okay, and then trash bowl by my workstation. Cuts down on trips to the garbage disposal and the trash can. So in the filling, we have our butter, we have strawberries, and I'm doing half of, if you're reading along with the recipe, I'm doing actually maybe like a third of what you guys have. And then we have a little bit of cornstarch. This is going to help thicken the juices. So you're going to have the liquid, like liquidy butter, but you're also going to have the liquid that comes from the strawberries when you're cooking them. And then, did I say brown sugar already? Brown sugar, a little bit of salt, cornstarch. And then once these are done cooking, I'm going to go ahead and turn this on to high heat. Once these are done cooking, then we're going to add the vanilla in. You never want to add vanilla in while you're cooking because you'll cook the flavor right out. So I'm just going to dump everything in at once. Put the strawberries in here. So I use fresh strawberries. You could certainly use frozen strawberries if you wanted to, especially if you're doing this off season. Frozen strawberries are an option. The only problem is they don't always come chopped, so you'd have to wait for them to thaw to cut them up. All right, so we definitely want all the cornstarch in there. So as I said, the cornstarch is going to help thicken the juices. Cornstarch is activated by a boil. So once these juices come to a boil, that's where the cornstarch kicks in. I'm just going to try and just get it stirred all around so that the cornstarch doesn't burn to the bottom of the pan. So we're using induction, which we do in every class. Induction has a faster reaction time than even gas. So if you have induction at home, these cooking times are not going to be the same as what they are in the recipe. So these will cook. We're going to bring the liquid to a boil and let it cook for just a couple of minutes. So the strawberries will continue to cook in the oven because they're going to go in the oven for at least 20 to 30 minutes, just depending on your oven. Okay. So I'm going to let these kind of sit here for a second. I just want to make sure to get them like evenly coated also. So those look good. I'm just going to leave that right there. So in this bowl, for the cookie topping, we have brown sugar. You could also use, if you want to stay away from refined sugars, you could use coconut sugar. You could also use honey. Honey will just have, it's going to have a different consistency. It's going to be a little, like a little bit looser. And then we have an egg. Melted butter. We want the melted butter to be cooled down just a little bit. And then a little bit of vanilla. Just want to keep an eye on the strawberries too at the same time, just to make sure they're not burning to the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to whisk this all together. And the oven, the little toaster oven, I feel like the little toaster oven is like the little engine that could, because I feel like it's turned out some pretty great things. It's at 350. All right, this is definitely boiling, so I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to just stir it around. Make sure, again, that it's all evenly coated. Now I'm going to stir in the vanilla for the filling. I'm sure somebody has a question, can you do this with other fruits? Yes, you can do this with other fruits. Peaches is a really good option. Like raspberries have a super high water content, so you'd have to use a little bit more cornstarch for raspberries, but you could do a mixed berry version of this. All right, so I'm going to dump these. I might not use the whole thing. Just going to dump these in here. I am going to use the whole thing. Look at that. Okay. So I'm going to save that spatula to actually use in here. So I'm done whisking, so I'm going to get rid of my whisk. If I were to try to use my whisk when I add in the flours, the ingredients would get stuck into the balloon of the whisk, and then you're just spending time trying to get it all out of the balloon of the whisk. So next we have our dry ingredients. So we're using regular flour, whole wheat flour. We're using old-fashioned oats. Don't use the quick cooking oats because your topping will taste like gummy. A little bit of baking soda and a little bit of salt. If you've taken my classes before, you might be shocked I say a little bit of salt. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to stir until that flour is just combined, because if we overmix our flour, you'll develop the glutens in the flour and you'll end up with a super tough end product, which we don't want. So I'm going to circle back on the preheating of the oven. I can't remember if I've gone over this before, but if we have anybody new on here, it'll benefit you to hear this. So when you're preheating your oven, so say you're preheating your oven to 350. So when your oven tells you it's preheated, whether like a light goes on or a light goes off or it dings when it's preheated, that just means, so there's a sensor in the corner of the oven, like the upper part corner of the oven, that's what's reading the temperature. Just because that one corner of the oven is 350 degrees doesn't mean the whole oven cavity is 350 degrees. So especially when baking, you want to wait another 15 minutes until you put whatever it is you're baking into the oven. This makes a big difference. A lot of people, when they hear this, they're like, oh, my first batch of cookies never comes out because the oven temperature is not even. So if you wait that extra 15 minutes, that might solve some of the issues you're having. Okay, so I want you to kind of see the consistency of this. This isn't like a regular cookie batter consistency. It's more of like a, I don't know, it's in between like a cake batter and a cookie dough. So when it's kind of runny like this, you haven't done anything wrong. This is the consistency it's supposed to be. So I kind of like dollop it on top. I think the recipe says sprinkle. I should probably change that terminology because there's no sprinkling with this consistency. So we'll just kind of dollop it on. And then once we get it all on, we'll spread it into one even layer. So in my oven, this takes about 20 minutes. And what you're looking for is it to be like a little bit golden brown. And you want the juices to start bubbling again. So the reason why I say my oven is because all ovens are going to cook differently. And times in recipes are guidelines. So you're really just going for visual cues. So in this, you want to look at it and make sure it's a nice golden brown. You don't want it to be too dark on the top because you don't want that cookie. You want it to be like tender. You don't want it to be like a crispy cookie on top. So just remember when you're cooking, I always err on the side of checking early because you can't go backwards if you've checked too late, but you can always add more time if you've checked too early. So for this baked good, that is the visual cue we're looking for. So we're going to put this in the little toaster oven over here. We'll see how this goes. I'm always amazed at what fits in that little toaster oven. So we'll do, I don't know, we'll do 20 minutes. I have one baked ahead in case it's not done by the time we're done with this. So I can always show that as the example. Are there any questions at all? Everybody's going to crush this when they make it at home? Okay. I also want to circle back on melted butter. So this recipe did call for melted butter. So obviously we're melting it. I always melt on like 10-second increments because I'm sure this has happened to you where the butter has exploded in your microwave. So I just do 10 seconds at a time just to be safe. It takes a little bit longer. It's kind of tedious, but I would rather it take longer than me spending more time cleaning out the inside of my microwave. When a recipe calls for softened butter, don't put it in the microwave to soften it. That will change the chemical structure of the butter and it will act differently in your recipe than it is supposed to. So if a recipe calls for softened butter and you're like, uh-oh, I forgot to take out my butter to soften it, just cut it into little cubes. You're increasing the surface area and it'll come to room temperature a lot faster. Or if you have like a beer pint glass, you can fill it with super hot water, dump the water out, and then turn it over on top of that stick of butter, and that'll help it come to room temperature as well. Some little tidbits. Thanks. Okay, so unless there are any questions on the dessert, we are going to move on to our chopped spring salad. And there's lots of knife technique in this. So I'm just gonna make the switcheroo. If you think of any questions. Yes. Yes. So the question, yes. So the question is, can you make the dessert ahead of time? Yes, you can. And you can do one of two things. You can bring it to room temperature and just serve it at room temperature, which is totally fine. Or you can reheat it in a 350-degree oven until it's warmed through. The only thing you're risking at that point is overcooking that cookie crust on the top. If you want to avoid that, then you undercook it a little bit when you're baking it the first time. So then when you're reheating it, it kind of cooks to where it's supposed to be. I would cook it because you don't want that like cookie topping to sink into the strawberries. Yeah, so you would cook it, or you can par cook it, like cook it all the way through, either one. But just if you cook it all the way through ahead of time, you're just running the risk of overcooking it when you're reheating it, or like drying it out. But then you just add more ice cream on the top. Totally optional, the ice cream. All right, so now it's out of the way too. Our chopped spring salad. So you can see the ingredients in this salad. If you don't like any of the veggies in there, you don't have to use them. You can substitute other veggies, or you can add more of one of the other veggies that you do like. Okay. Lots of fun stuff here. I love all the colors of everything. And this salad has a lot of crunch, which I also love. I'm like, I don't think my bowl is going to be big enough to mix everything, but we'll do the best that we can. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Frozen strawberry pan. What was frozen?
Nothing was frozen. I had mentioned that you can use frozen strawberries if you are doing this off season and you don't have it. There aren't, well, you're always going to have strawberries available in the grocery store. They're not always going to be good. They're going to be best when they're in season. But if you want to use frozen strawberries instead of fresh strawberries, 100% you can do that. You would just need to use like a little bit more cornstarch in order to thicken the extra liquid that's coming off the frozen strawberries. That makes sense? Hopefully. I'm going to assume yes. Okay. Yes, of course. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make the dressing, because the longer the ingredients sit together, the better the flavors come together. So the instructions say to do it for about an hour. We don't have an hour. Overnight is actually best to do it so that all the flavors do come together. But we are starting with Greek yogurt. And I hope it all fits into this little bowl. You always, so I don't know if you're like my daughter, but if you have like that extra liquid in your yogurt or like your sour cream, and you're like, that's disgusting, I don't want that extra liquid, and you pour it out, you're actually pouring out protein. So just mix it all back together in there so you're not losing any of the nutritional content of your yogurt or your sour cream. Okay, so we have that. And then we are going to add a little bit of olive oil. This is just going to give it kind of like a dressing consistency along with the lemon juice. I just got back from Spain on Saturday testing a trip to take clients. So if anybody's interested in a culinary adventure, October 2027, but we did an olive oil tasting, and like not dipping in bread, but like sipping it. That was quite an experience. But you definitely can tell a difference between different levels of olive oil. Okay, so we have a tablespoon. This is a naked lemon. I've zested it for another recipe. So whenever you zest and you haven't juiced it, you always want to either wrap it in plastic or put it in a plastic bag to put it back into the refrigerator, because you don't want the skin to dry out. So once you've kind of taken the yellow part off, the pith underneath will dry out pretty quickly. So roll it around on your cutting board first, putting a ton of pressure on it so you loosen up the juice pockets in there. And then you're going to cut it in half. And then you're just going to squeeze it. So cut side down in this little guy. And then that'll go in my trash bowl. Doesn't want to come out. And then we're going to do, it says garlic clove minced, but we're going to do a paste. So for my paste, I'm going to need a little bit of kosher salt and a garlic clove. This is a pretty big garlic clove, so that's good. Okay, side of your knife, heel of your hand. This is going to be loud because we're going to give it a quick pop. So blade facing away from you. You just want to crack the skin. We're not trying to crush it at this point. So the skin should crack. This is a tough skin. So oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so I'm not cutting either end off of my garlic clove. Cutting board towards the end of the counter. Garlic clove towards the end of the cutting board. I cut with my right hand, so that little root end is going to be facing to my left. If you cut with your left hand, it's going to be facing to your right. You're going to take your knife. You're going to be all the way at the end of the cutting board. You want your knuckles to be like off of the cutting board, off of the counter. So we're all the way at the end. You're going to turn your knife over. You're not going to rest your hand on the blade. You're going to plant the tip of your knife, and you're going to come straight down on the garlic clove, almost as if you were shaving off the end of the garlic clove. So this is going to crush and mince at the same time. It only works with fresh garlic. So crushing releases the oil in the garlic and mincing cuts the garlic. So I use like a lot of force on this. It's not like a dainty little movement. Like there's a lot of pressure. My knuckles are white when I'm doing this. So a lot of people, their biggest mistake is just kind of coming real softly down on it, and it kind of squishes the garlic instead of minces it. So as I said, we're making a paste. I like to make garlic pastes when I'm using them in like meatballs or salad dressings or dips, because you spread the garlic flavor throughout instead of coming across like big chunks of garlic. So put the garlic in the center of your cutting board, and then you're just going to mince it up a little bit more. This is going to help the paste get started. And then I am going to put a little bit of salt, kosher salt, on top of that pile of garlic. So I have a little pile. So I am taking, so I plant the whole back part of my knife on the cutting board, and with my blade, I come straight down and I pull forward. And then I go up a little further and pull, pull, pull. So it's almost like a rocking motion, but with the side of my knife. And I keep doing that until I've got a nice paste. Okay. All right, that looks good. So you can see how that's a paste. It's not like minced garlic. So I'm going to put this in here. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of the garlic smell in my hands. So wash your hands with soap and water, and with the lather still on your fingers, you rub your fingers against something stainless steel. So the sink here is stainless, so I'm just going to rub my fingers against that. But you have to have the lather of the soap still on your fingers, or it will not work. What's that? Wait, hold on one second, because I can't. Let me get this smell off first. Okay, what was the question? Like buying it? Like buying it already done? Is that the question? What are my thoughts on pre-done garlic? Can you guess by my reaction what my thought is on that? Is that what they meant by buying it in the tube? Oh, okay. Okay, I'll answer that as soon as they. Okay, wait. I saw something pop up. In a pinch. So using it in a pinch means you already have it at home. So fresh is always going to be best. A good plan B is if you shop at Trader Joe's, they have minced garlic in the frozen section. And it doesn't have any additives or anything in it. And you just pop them out right from frozen. Each cube is a clove. Pop it out right from frozen. That's going to be your second best. When you buy it already minced in a jar or already in a paste in a tube, just look at the ingredients. And it doesn't really taste like what garlic should taste like. Tomato paste, yes. Tomato paste is actually a separate ingredient. It's an ingredient in and of itself. Garlic paste really isn't. So fresh is always best. I get it that we need shortcuts. My suggested shortcut would be the Trader Joe's frozen that you can use right from there. And there's no additives in there at all. Hopefully that answered the question. Honestly, like I really feel like that's the only thing I'm like have a big opinion about on like using already prepared. I'm just, as long as it tastes like what it's supposed to taste like, shortcuts are fine. But when the flavor of it is changed in the process of becoming a shortcut, that I'm not on board with. But totally get that we all need shortcuts. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so then we're gonna add a little sriracha. You do not have to add sriracha if you don't want to. That just went everywhere. You could add a little bit of mustard in here. You could add a little bit of like Cholula in here. You can leave it out and just have it like a lemon Greek yogurt dressing. So we're just going to add just a little bit in there. So don't feel like you have to add that ingredient. And I'm going to add, actually, I'm not going to add salt yet because I used salt in my garlic paste. So I'm going to taste it first before I just go ahead and add salt. So we're just going to whisk this. So this is the consistency. It's definitely looser than a yogurt, but not as really as loose as a typical dressing. Okay, so I'm going to taste this. I'm just going to add like a little bit of salt. The sriracha helps like bring out a little bit of flavor in there. I might add a little bit of pepper too. So I'm probably adding like a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, and then I'm going to taste it again. I'm using the 2-spoon tasting method. So I transfer to my spoon without touching so I can use the same tasting spoon the whole time. Okay, that's better. So salt is meant to just brighten the flavors of your food. It's not supposed to make your food taste salty. So if your food tastes salty after you've seasoned it, you've over salted it. All right, so now let's get into the ingredients. So we're going to start with our herbs. So we have some chives. I already have some chopped chives here. I'm going to dump those in, but I am going to show you how to chop chives. So for some reason, people love to chop chives really big, I think, because they're like, I want to get this done. So they just chop them really big. So I'm just going to take out, the good thing about chives, you can do a bunch at a time. So I'm going to show you how not to do it, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so here's our chives. And I'm just going to show you how not to do it. So these are really big pieces of chives. You don't want huge pieces of chives in whatever it is you're making. It doesn't look good, but it also doesn't taste good when you get this huge piece of chive in your mouth. So we want to chop them pretty fine. And again, you can do a bunch at a time so it doesn't take forever. So there we go. So we'll just add those to what we already have in there. And then the next thing we're going to do is mint. So here's your mint. We're going to do a chiffonade. We're probably not going to get 2 tablespoons out of this. We'll do the best we can. So the knife technique is called a chiffonade. So it's when you take the leaves of your herb and you stack them on top of each other. So this works really well for like basil, mint, and sage. It smells really good. You can roll it into a nice tight cylinder, and you can use whatever herb you want in here, whatever you have in your garden or whatever you have in your fridge. Use that. Like dill would go really well in here. So there we have like just nice little ribbons instead of just randomly chopped. So I'm going to do a few more leaves in there. So just stack them. You could also do this with like spinach or kale. I do this technique when I'm doing a spinach slaw to get the spinach nice in like nice little ribbons instead of randomly chopped pieces. Okay. There we go. I might do one more round. Mint always makes everything taste fresh. And it's also going to help like with there's not even really that much heat from the sriracha. It's almost like a peppery flavor, but if you had something spicy, mint helps to kind of cool it down. You can smell it from over there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's fresh. This is out of my garden. This is like the tail end. It's all getting dried up. Okay, so next we'll add salt and pepper at the end, but we have cucumber. So this was a longer English cucumber. You do not have to peel this if you don't want to. The skin on an English cucumber is thin enough that you don't have to cut off the skin if you don't want to. So it comes wrapped in plastic, typically, to keep the skin from drying out. The cucumbers that we grew up with, the Kirby cucumbers, were waxed or are waxed. And that serves the same purpose. So it just keeps the skin from drying out. But the Kirby cucumber has a way thicker skin. So I typically would cut the skin off of that. So we're not even going to take, these are seedless, not really, but almost. And typically I would take the seeds out, but I'm not going to for this because I like the shape of it. So I'm going to leave the seeds in. So you just cut the ends off, cut them into quarters, skin side down. Whenever you have skin on something that you're cutting, whether it's a fruit or a vegetable, you always want the skin to be in contact with the cutting board. It's easier on you and your knife. So I chop the stem in with the leaves because for cilantro and parsley, those stems are tender enough that you can chop them in. And I'll show you how the way I do it. So I'll have the bunch of cilantro. I chop off what I think I'm going to need, and then you just put it in the center of your cutting board, tips of your fingers on the tip of your knife, and just do a semicircle cut. That's how I do most herbs, like parsley, cilantro, rosemary, thyme. That's how I would chop all of those. Okay, next we have avocado, but I'm going to wait till last. Actually, we'll prep one and then I'll do another one right before we do it. I'm going to get a spoon.
The English cucumber and the other one, are they interchangeable? Are there any recipes you would use one instead of the other?
I prefer to only use the like the English cucumbers, just because they don't have the seeds. They have like baby seeds, and they don't have that thick skin. So I prefer to use those, even for like a vegetable plate. I just use those. I don't even buy the Kirby ones anymore, like the thicker ones. Okay, so for your avocado, so I stab the top of the avocado. So old wives' tale. I've heard people say that if you take the stem, the dried stem off of the top, and if it's green underneath, the whole avocado is going to be green. That's not the case. You never know what you're going to get when you get into an avocado. You could have 75% of it could be perfect, and then the other quarter of it could be gnarly. So I stab in the top, and then I turn the avocado. I do not turn my knife. I don't move my knife at all. And then I just twist it. Oh, that's a pretty good one. And then I'm not going to do anything with this half right now. So to keep yourself from cutting your hand, you can put your avocado on your cutting board and go through it. Or you could use a butter knife. Like avocados are tender enough that you can use a butter knife. If you want to do it in your hand, just be really careful. Like I typically do it in my hand. I just know the pressure. Coming. Oh, thanks. Let's take a peek at this. Nope. That one's going to, I think this one's going to be one of those ones that takes longer, which is fine. We have one ahead. Okay, so you can do this ahead of time, like do the other side too, and put it back together and wrap it in plastic. You can do this in the morning, and then you come back and then you can just scoop it out and use it. So we'll get back to the avocado in just a second. So then we have our scallions. Here's a scallion. I want to make sure it's clean. So the white part is the flavorful part. I have had many students who have never even used the white part before. They've only used the green part at the end. This is where the flavor comes from, so you definitely want to use it. So you just chop off that root end and then just cut it into little rounds. And I go up to the point where that top part isn't like wilted. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and dump that in. And then we have our radishes. So when you buy radishes, that comes with the greens on top. As soon as I you can get them with the green, without the greens too. I usually just buy them with the greens on top. As soon as I get home, I cut those greens off. Because if you leave them in that plastic bag in the fridge, those greens will start to break down and they get really gross, and you don't want to reach in the bag to get the radishes, even though the radishes are fine. So I just cut those guys off right away just to avoid that whole situation. Obviously, you want to wash them. They're grown in the ground, so you want to wash the dirt off of them. So you're gonna, I still have scallion on cutting board. So you're gonna cut off either end, turn it over onto that flat side. You always want a flat side when you're cutting. Cut it in half, turn it over again, and then thin strips. If you don't like radishes, some people don't like radishes, you can leave it out. You could use jicama to have that kind of same crunch, but not the kind of bite of a radish. You could do that as well. Adding those in there. And then we're gonna have our snap peas. It is very colorful. So I do try to get the strings out of the snap pea. So you just, it doesn't matter which end, you just kind of break off one end and then the string should come off both sides. So kind of a pain, not required, but I do like to do it so you don't have that stringiness in the snap pea. So thin pieces. And then we have our cherry tomatoes. So I just cut them. I use cherubs. I get them at Costco. I always have cherubs in the fridge. I like to put them in my eggs. So I just cut them up. Just cut them in half. Oh, I forgot to put I was like, this isn't looking very full. Forgot to put this stuff in there. Okay. I might mix it. Typically I would not do this, but I'm going to do it. So typically I would mix in a separate bowl than what I serve in, just so I don't get like dressing all over the presentation bowl, but we're going to make an exception. All right, so now I'm going to add in my dressing. So you just want to make sure that when you're dressing a salad, no matter if it's vegetable based, lettuce based, grain based, you want just enough dressing to lightly coat your ingredients. Your dressing, other than a Caesar salad, your dressing is a complement to the ingredients. It should not be the main flavor. So I'll start with probably like half, and then I'll mix it together. Actually, after I do this, I'm going to add the avocados in. So we'll need more. This is so, I don't know. Let's see. Let's add the avocados in there. So I'm going to stab this. And then I'm going to get a paper towel to take the pit. You don't want to grab it with your bare hand because they're slippery. You could cut yourself. I'll just take it off and then we'll throw it away. And we'll just do the same prep on this side. I forgot to mention, when I'm getting avocados to use on a salad, I get them kind of a little bit underripe so that when you mix them into the salad, they don't get squished in the salad. They keep their shape. But not like crunchy, just like a little bit more firm than if you were to use them for like a guacamole. Okay, so now you just scoop that out. I think these are big avocados, so I think one avocado is going to be good for this salad. Okay. Everybody's so quiet here. Yeah, it is a quiet day. Okay, so I'm going to continue to mix that up with the avocado in, and then we'll evaluate the dressing. Okay, I think it could use a little bit more dressing. So if you know somebody who loves a lot of dressing on their salad, that's fine. Just serve the extra on the side. Okay. So this would be a great main course with, I mean, I love this with salmon. But you could also do chicken, you could do steak, you could do grilled shrimp on top of this. So lots of options. You could add garbanzo beans into this. That would be a good add as well. Okay, that looks good. All right, so now I'm going to taste it. I'm going to turn around to taste it because these are big chunks and I don't want you guys to watch if they fall out of my mouth. More salt. And some pepper. Freshly cracked black pepper would be way better on this. I just don't have it with me. Okay. Give it another try. And think of any questions. What? Did you see my reflection? Did you hear my jaw unhinge? Okay. I think that's pretty good. I personally would probably add a little bit more salt, but I'm gonna let everybody else decide on that. Okay, so this one's not done.
Yeah, it was just like maybe another 10 minutes. But,
Yeah, that one's gonna take a little while. I'm gonna turn it up just a little bit. But this is what it looks like. Okay, so you could absolutely, I'll probably pop this in the microwave to heat it up for everybody who's here. You could absolutely use, if you wanted to do like some ice cream or whipped cream with this, or you can just top it with some powdered sugar for presentation. But this, again, you can leave it out to get it to room temperatures. It's almost there, but not quite there. Or you can reheat it in the oven if you want to. But once it's on the plate, then you see like all the strawberries come out of it and it looks actually nicer. It doesn't look like a sliced piece of cake, but you can see the strawberries when they come out. So there's a little bit more color to it. Any questions on either one of the things that we made today?
That's great for anybody that's not in here. And the colors are just so vibrant.
Oh, Brittany's here. Brittany, come and talk about the nutritional aspect of this.
Love the fact that you did because the yogurt dressing is going to have protein in it. And I know a lot of people that use like ranch dressing and carrots together. This would be a really great alternative to dip your carrots, your cucumbers, your tomatoes in, especially with the sriracha, give it a little bit of flavor. So I love the fact that you're getting protein with your vegetable. I love the colors in the salad. I always talk about eating the rainbow. So she used plenty of beautiful reds and greens. And then she used avocado for a healthy fat in it. So I like the fact that there's healthy fat. You could even add like some nuts on top for some additional crunch and healthy fat. But I think with the cucumbers and the radishes, it has a lot of crunch with it. So it's good texture. With the cobbler, I liked that she used whole wheat flour and oatmeal. So it's going to have a little bit more fiber to it. And then obviously the strawberries have a lot of good antioxidants. So it's a really healthy dessert. And again, I always say, don't completely deprive yourself of things that you might want that are sweets. Try to make them a little bit healthier if you can. And then try to also give yourself a bank account of calories that you're spending on things like that. So I would say if you're trying for a 1,600 calorie diet, and you really want something, then only eat 1,400 calories of the really balanced good stuff and save a little bit of calories for your dessert. So that way you're not eating 1,600 calories and then getting 1,800 calories, if that makes sense. And then also work out a little harder the times you have dessert, but there's always room for dessert. And I think that that's the key to any good lifestyle plan, is having that allowance for things that you love and for good quality of life. Because it's social. Sometimes you want to have dessert with your family and friends, and I'm all for it. So thank you so much. The smells excellent. I wish you could smell it, but I can't wait to taste it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, unless there are any other questions, we're gonna go eat this stuff. So if you do have questions, you can always email and we have to answer them. But thanks for coming. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome.